Joining me now from the Heritage Foundation, a member of President Trump's Election Integrity Commission, Hans von Spakovsky. Hans, thanks for being here.
Hi, Liz.
All right, Hans, so this is very interesting coming from the DNC, claiming that the biggest lie a president has ever told is the comment from President Trump after the election about there being potentially millions of fraudulent votes. I can think of just a few lies that other presidents have told. I am not a crook. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. But it does bring up a question that I want to ask you, and that is, do we have evidence that there was widespread voter fraud in the past election?
Well, what we have evidence of is that fraud occurs all the time in American elections. The problem is we don't know how big it is because nobody's ever done the kind of systematic, widespread study that this commission wants to do. And that, brings up what you've been talking about is why is it that Democrats are so against this commission actually researching the issue and trying to get the answer to that?
Right. There are so many issues, I think, in our political climate today that are polarizing. Parties come from different philosophies, philosophical backgrounds, different worldviews. This one, I don't understand why Democrats and Republicans don't come together on this. Every person's vote is valuable. Every person wants to know that their vote counts, that a fraudulent individual or a fraudulent organization hasn't stolen that vote for them. Why do the Democrats oppose this?
Well, let's take a good example of that. Terry McAuliffe, the Democratic governor of Virginia. He's one of the people that has said they don't want to provide any information or data to the commission. He's the same same governor who did everything he could to prevent another group, the Public Interest Legal Foundation, from getting information on over 5,000 non-citizens who'd been removed from the voter rolls in Virginia, many of whom had voted in past elections. They tried to prevent that information from getting out. What does that tell you about him and his motives?
Right. It's a bit suspicious if you ask me, but talk to me for 1 second. So you're on this commission. You obviously know exactly what's going on. What is your process? How are you guys going about looking into this, studying this without an agenda, just objectively to see what's there?
Well, for example, we've asked all the states to provide us with their lists of the voters who are voted in the states and their voter histories. One of the reasons for that is we want to run that data, compare it to other states. Let's find out how many people are registered in more than one state, how many people actually are voting in more than one state. We also want to run it against Department of Homeland Security databases of non-citizens. Let's find out how many non-citizens are registered and illegally voting in the U.S. Why would we not want to figure that out?
Right, and I guess the concern from Democrats, and this is a chance for you to address this, is that the privacy of voters, they don't want to turn this data over to the federal government. And I do actually understand that argument just a bit because I don't really trust the federal government or commissions on behalf of the federal government to have my data. But theoretically, or I guess practically here, when you're talking about comparing voter rolls, I mean, why would anyone be opposed to seeing if someone is using their vote in a different state? Again, it makes no sense to me.
Well, it doesn't. And let's be very clear here. What the commission has asked for is publicly available information. And what everyone should understand is that states routinely give away and sell all the data we've asked for, voter registration lists, voter histories. They give it to candidates so they can run for office. They give it to political parties. They give it to basically anyone who walks in the door and asks for it. So the idea that the commission is somehow engaging in some kind of big privacy violation just isn't true.
Right, and I guess the outrage coming from Democrats about this commission almost seems to me like circumstantial evidence that perhaps President Trump's claim that there were millions of fraudulent votes might actually be true. Because, Hans, don't we have data that shows that when there are illegal votes, they tend to go to Democratic politicians?
Yeah, we have a database at the Heritage Foundation where we keep track of voter fraud cases. It's now up to almost 1,100 proven cases, including people convicted in a court of law. There are Republicans who've been convicted in that, but the majority of the cases seem to be Democrats who are convicted for election fraud.
Right, and it's the inconsistency here, too, that bothers me about Democrats. I mean, they're all gung-ho. Every headline, every talking point, they always pivot immediately back to Russia. They want to investigate Russia. They want to investigate collusion to make sure that Russia didn't impact our election or steal our votes. They didn't meddle with the integrity of our democratic process. That's the same goal as the Election Integrity Commission. They want to make sure, you guys want to make sure that our votes haven't been polluted, they haven't been violated. Democrats support this, yet oppose this. I mean, what are you guys going to do to get around this?
Well, the Heritage database, I have 1,100 pieces of evidence that voter fraud occurs. There doesn't seem to be a single piece of evidence that the Trump administration colluded with anybody in Russia to change the outcome. So we have a lot of evidence on one side, absolutely none on the other.
Right. If only facts mattered to liberals here. Now, Hans, you yourself personally, you've become somewhat of a target being on this commission. I mean, I saw a piece by Samantha Bee over at TBS. She was talking about, she accused you essentially of being a racist, of trying to suppress the votes of minority voters. That's pretty harsh rhetoric coming from someone who, targeting you, who are trying to preserve the integrity of our elections. How do you respond to that?
Well, those kind of personal attacks indicate that they really can't debate on the substantive issues. And look, the very fact that I think voter ID is a good idea, well, the American people agree with me, by the way, including a majority of African Americans who all think that's a common sense idea and a common sense requirement. The idea that you're a racist because you think you should have to prove who you say you are when you go to vote, that's just an absurd claim.
Right, it is absurd. Plus, if you look at the data, and I mentioned this statistic in the introduction, but if you look at the data, I think it's 3% of black Americans don't have government ID, 2% of white Americans don't. Based off of the proportionality of the demographics in our country, that means more white people don't have government ID than black people. So I'm not sure how you can paint that as a racist issue here.